Hello everyone, welcome to What's Missing. Today we'll be talking about Nicholas J Fuentes and his harsh criticism of the drag community, especially concerning children. Even though his argument makes sense in some very basic ways, Nick fails to provide any depth or reasoning to justify his feelings, arguing that he's tapped into some sacred religious truth without relying on any evidence to back him up. In the end, he spends 6 minutes ranting about anything and everything, ultimately exposing just how ignorant he is. So, let's check it out.
And these are the fabulous kids of the drag convention. Is this fabulous, folks? Is this fabulous? Look at this. I look at something like this, and my first thought is, and I think this should be the first thought for anybody. If you're doing something, whether it's photography or whether it's cultural, and you think to yourself, will pedophiles like this or dislike this? Will pedophiles be really excited by this or not? And if you answer in the affirmative, I think you should just stop what you're doing right away, right? I mean, isn't that what a normal person would say? You're out there and maybe you're an honest to goodness liberal. Maybe you're like, well, I have a couple of gay friends and they should just get married. But you go to something like this, you go to the drag convention, and you see 2-year-olds in a bra, like half naked. You see people with this makeup. They're with drag queens with all the sexual innuendo, and you think to yourself, are pedophiles or people that molest and abuse children, are they going to be excited by this or not? If you answer in the affirmative, I think if you can answer in the affirmative, you're basically a Satanist if you go ahead with it anyway, and that's exactly what they do. I mean, this is downright the sexualization of children. And people say, oh, it's harmless. People say, oh, and this is people on the left, not normal people we're talking about. They say, oh, it's all in good fun. They're expressing themselves. No, wrong. This is an explicitly sexual culture. I mean, the whole point of it is about innuendo and about all that. It's in clubs where you're drinking and all the rest. What is makeup for? The point of makeup is to make yourself more sexually appealing. And so what you see here is the systematic sexualization of children. And this is where we point to vice, but even more broadly to the culture. And this is where we say, unequivocally, without compromise, that the left, the globalist establishment, this is not incompetence, this is not ignorance, this is not a difference of opinion. This is deliberate and this is evil. These people are demons. They're not people, well, we have a couple of subtle disagreements. I happen to think that children should not be sexualized. Yeah, that's just one of those differences of opinion that you could work out in a Lockean John Stuart Mill style debate. No, 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 no. Wrong. These people have to be opposed with fanatical, religious devotion.
Okay, now, to an extent, I can understand where Nick is coming from. Makeup, dresses, wearing an exposed bra, posing as a fashion model, these things have sexual implications. And Nick is probably right to assume that pedophiles probably enjoy children's drag shows. Despite that possibility, though, it's a well known fact that the drag community despises sexual predators, typically doing whatever they can to root out those individuals even accused of such behavior. This leads me to believe that no, drag shows are not intended to attract predators. And even if some of them work their way into the drag community, plenty of people at every level of their culture are willing to challenge these actors. For most children that perform drag, it's more like a way to express themselves with makeup and clothes. Yes, makeup can make you feel attractive, and other people might interpret that appearance as sexually attractive as opposed to just being beautiful. In my opinion, though, I think it shouldn't matter how other people interpret your clothes, your makeup. Children and adults deserve the freedom to explore whatever forms of self-expression will fulfill their lives. So long as no one gets hurt, of course. I doubt Nick would be willing to see things this way, though. To people like him, it's easier to believe that Democrats are a bunch of Satanists, rather than accept the fact that some boys like to feel pretty. The fact is, child abuse is not common in drag conventions, but it sure was common among the Boy Scouts, and the boys weren't even wearing dresses or makeup. To me, this proves that Nick's assumptions about drag queens are solely based on his emotions, rather than any facts or evidence.
So we go on, yeah, it's fire. Oh, it's lit. It's so lit when you sexualize baby children. I've been doing drag since I was 2. I would take my mom's towels and bed sheets and anything I could get my hands on and turn them into savage outfits. Yas. What kind of country do we live in? We're not living in a clown world. We are living in hell world.
Yeah. Remember moments ago when I said that most kids get into drag because they like it? I mean, here's a quote from a kid talking about how he feels. Not because his parents told him what to think, not because the left wing establishment brainwashed him, but because he genuinely enjoys drag. I mean, is that such a horrible thing? Is that really so satanic for a child to like makeup? Is this really so hard to understand? Now, I'd like to take a moment to point out Nick's total inability to accept that some kids are different from him. He is so unwilling to even consider that a young boy might enjoy makeup, and yet here they are proving him wrong. And the only explanation he can cling to is that the demonic left wing is the real problem, not Nick's sheltered, repressive religious views. To me, this proves that Nick doesn't really care about the kid's happiness. He's only concerned about how it looks to him. And in my opinion, I think Nick is gonna grow up to be one of those parents that won't let their son wear pink because he's worried it'll turn him gay. Nicholas J Fuentes is insecure and ultimately dominated by his fear of what he can't understand.
Just read this stuff. 2 years old. Do you think a 2-year-old can make a sound decision about this? A 2-year-old, oh, I'm a homosexual drag queen now. Really? Or is that being forced on them by the parents? And instead of calling child services on the parents, instead of in a normal country, we take the kids out of that situation, they're on the cover of a major magazine, and people, oh my God, it's so progressive, it's so great. This is a society that deserves to burn. This is a society that deserves, there is nothing salvageable here. I mean, we can try, and we can try to bring back some of the things that were lost, but this is something that is so, I mean, this is why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, this is that level of depravity. I don't know how anybody could look at this kind of thing and think that the left and what is going on in the country is anything but demonic, anything but satanic.
Okay, wow. I feel like that section really jumped up a notch in terms of the amount of crazy. But anyway, so the left wing and drag queens and children wearing drag are all demonic, and even though Nick just read a quote from a kid talking about how he started drag at the age of 2 because he wanted to, explicitly not because of the parents, Nick still fails to grasp that that's a reality for many children. You see, Nick just has to believe that the parents are responsible, even after acknowledging a testimonial that completely contradicts him. And yes, I'm sure there are tiger moms out there who force their kids to put 110% into everything they do, whether it's drag or math or soccer, instead of letting those kids just be kids for a while. But as I've already said, the vast majority of children that participate in drag chose that lifestyle for themselves, and it would just be ignorant to assume otherwise, even if it's hard for you to believe. The fact that Nick just can't accept this, the fact that the only alternative to some boys liking drag is the complete and utter destruction of all liberals everywhere, just goes to show how severely unhinged Nick Fuentes is, how utterly incapable he is of accepting that some people are different from him. And Nick assuming that the kid that got quoted is a homosexual drag queen? Yeah, buddy. So thoughtful of you. You know that you can be straight and be a drag queen, right? You know straight people like to dress up and wear makeup and feel beautiful too, right? Do you realize this, Nick? I don't know if he does. And honestly, if you're expecting Nick to consider any perspective beyond his own, you are going to be horribly disappointed.
And that's the chief fallacy that we try and tackle on the show, is we are beyond the point of debate. We are beyond the point of compromise or pragmatism. We are moving in two very different directions on very much higher levels, not political, not logical, not in terms of fiscal. It is spiritual. It is of a higher dimension. They have two fundamentally different visions of the world. Are we going to be this hellscape where the children are sexualized, everything goes against God, everything is disordered, and we have sex with men and women, and there's no marriage, and there's no families, and it's polygamy, and it's about consumption, and we're all just this deracinated, rootless class of individuals that toil away endlessly for cheap food and cummies? I mean, is that going to be our society, or are we going to move back towards something that is ordered, something that is looking towards a divine, looking at a higher nature? That's a disagreement. That cannot be reconciled. That cannot be negotiated. The only way that can be settled is with conflict. And I'm not talking about violent conflict. It hasn't gotten to that point. Maybe it hasn't gotten to the point yet. Who knows? But it can only be decided by us taking it into our own hands. And that's why this kind of stuff about Turning Point USA is bad and they're McCarthyites, it does not matter. There are no rules anymore. We are at war with Satan's forces on earth, with demonic forces. And there can be none of this, well, we have to have reasoned debate. We can't go down to their level. All is fair in this war, because what we're fighting for is nothing short than the fate of children like this. You look at people who are defenseless. You look at people who are innocent and harmless. And a child is the most, I think, divine expression of God, because these are people that are totally innocent. These are people that have not been touched by the evil of the world. And you see, this is what they're up against. This is what they're up against in the schools, in the media, in entertainment, in their own homes, from their own parents. They don't stand a chance. And so that's why we have to do it. That's why we have to fight. We have to fight brutally, without compromise, and there it is.
So here, Nick tries to play the whole, we should talk it through, but if we can't, then, who could blame us if we got violent routine? Which to me is sickening, because here he is making all these wild assumptions and conspiracy-laden word salad coming out his mouth without a single piece of evidence to back him up, and people are still going to think he's right. Because the people that agree with him, the people that Nick not so subtly just told that violence is probably the answer, these people are not going to listen to statistics or evidence of any kind. And sadly, that's the world we occupy. The data shows that right-wing extremism is the most dangerous form of terrorism in the US. And here Nick is, whether he knows it or not, condoning their actions, feeding into their lies without even the expectation of having to back up his claims. And that puts the rest of us in a tough position. We can either allow people like Nick to rape this country, killing homosexuals and drag queens just because they can't accept the fact that some boys like makeup, or we can stand against them, forming ranks of our own. It's sad. It's not what any of us on the moderate political side of things want to hear, but this is the reality we face. Right-wing extremists want to kill our families, our friends, our neighbors, and we have no choice but to defend ourselves. Anyway, on that harsh note, I think that's going to be it for today. You're welcome to provide any sources or criticisms you think I should take a look at. I like to read through the comments, and if you have a different perspective than mine, then I try to give myself the opportunity to hear what you have to say. And I hope you have a good week. Stay safe and take care. This has been What's Missing.